Hello children, today in this video we are going to discuss about carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is a biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycle means the cyclic flow of nutrients between non-living environment and living organism. Non-living environment, that means soil, air, water. Okay, so this is biogeochemical cycle. So carbon cycle, it is also a biogeochemical cycle in which carbon as carbon element is circulated in the biosphere between living as well as non-living elements. And carbon, it is also an essential life element. Okay children, let's see how this carbon cycle it works. So first of all, atmospheric carbon, it enters the plant. How it is entering the plant? Plant is preparing food for themselves by the process of photosynthesis. So atmospheric carbon, it is entering the plant in the form of carbon dioxide, and it is converted into carbohydrate, that means starch, by the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process in which green plants prepare their own food by taking this raw material, that is carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so carbohydrate, these are the carbon compounds which are passed to other organisms. So here atmospheric carbon, it is enters the plant in the form of carbon dioxide, and it is converted into carbohydrate by the process of photosynthesis. Okay. Now this carbon, it passes from these plants to animals. How they are passing this carbon from plants to animals? Through herbivores, because there are so many organisms which are not able to prepare their food, so they have to depend on plants for their food. Okay, so they are known as plant eaters, they are known as herbivores. So here they see a plant has prepared food, sugar, starch, then that plant it is used by those herbivorous animals. Okay, and it forms essential component of plant and animal tissues. Now what happened? They consume. Okay, then now what happened when these plants and animals die? When these plants and animals die, they decompose. How they are decomposed? By the action of microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi. This process of decomposition breaks down the organic matter. So when this organic matter is being broken down, carbon dioxide, it is released into the soil. During this decomposition process, carbon dioxide, it is being released into the soil. Now these dead plants and animals, what they form? They form fossil fuels. And fossil fuel, when compressed under high temp, and how these are formed? Fossil fuel are formed when they are compressed under high temperature for millions of years ago. Okay, now this carbon dioxide, it is released into the atmosphere when plants and animals, they respire. Okay, now burning of fuel such as wood or fossil fuel, such as coal, petroleum, natural gas, it also releases carbon dioxide. Industries, it releases smoke, so it gets into the atmosphere. So again carbon dioxide, it gets into the atmosphere. Again this cycle starts. Atmospheric carbon dioxide, it is used by plant for the process of photosynthesis. Again animal utilize it, then they decompose by the action of microorganism, then they are compressed under the soil millions of years ago, they form fossil fuel, and again it comes back to the atmosphere. So this is a cyclic process, because carbon enters through the plants during photosynthesis, and carbon dioxide, which is released into the atmosphere through these various processes, it is again reabsorbed by the plant, and thus the cycle gets completed. So this is all about carbon. Now children, our next topic is food chain. every organism, they need energy to they need to obtain energy in order to live. So, for example, plants, from where they get their energy? They get their energy from the sun. Some animals, what they do? They eat plants, and some animals, they eat another animals. So, in this way, the sequence goes on. So, what is food chain? It is a sequence of who eats whom in a biological community. That means in an ecosystem to obtain their nutrition. Or we can say a food chain, it starts with an organism that makes its own food. That means who is making their own food here? Producers, that means autotrophs, that means green plants, they are preparing their own food. Okay. And how they are preparing their own food? From the energy of the sun, that is sunlight. Okay. And chemosynthetic bacteria, what they are doing? They also make their food energy from chemicals in hydrothermal vents. So they are known as autotrophs or primary producers. They are known as autotrophs or primary producers. Next come organisms that eat the autotrophs. Those organisms which eat autotrophs, these organisms, they are known as herbivores or primary consumers. An example, we can take an example of a rabbit which eats these producers, that means they which eat grass. Now the next link in the chain is animals which eat these herbivores. That means these are known as secondary consumers. Now the next link in the chain is animals that eat herbivores. These are known as secondary consumers. Okay. So an example is a snake which eats rabbit. Okay. In turn, what to happen? These animals, these are eaten by larger predators. For example, owl that eats snake. Okay. And what does this arrow in the food chain indicates? These indicates the flow of energy from the sun to the predator. As the energy flows from one organism to another organism, the energy is lost at each step. Okay. So this is what food chain. So what is food chain? It is the sequence of who eats whom in a biological community or in an ecosystem to obtain their nutrition. Okay. Now the next topic is trophic levels. What is the trophic level? Trophic level of an organism is the position it is holding in a food chain. Okay. First level, that means primary producers. Who are primary producers? These are the organisms that make their own food. These are autotrophs. Producers, that means green plant, they make their own food from sunlight and form the base of every food chain. This is the base of every food chain. Here, these organisms, they are called autotrophs because they prepare their food. So the plant community, they all make up these autotrophs. Plant community, what they do? They make up these autotrophs. Now comes primary consumers. Primary consumers, these are the animals that eat these producers. They are also known as herbivores. Okay. Herbivores, that means which eats plant. For example, we can take grasshopper, deer, cow and so on. Now comes secondary consumers. Secondary consumers, these are the animals that eat primary consumers. Secondary consumers, they eat primary consumers. Okay. They are also known as carnivores. That means they are meat or flesh eaters. Okay. And omnivores also. Omnivores, that means those animals which can eat plants as well as animals both. For example, dog, snake, tiger, so Okay, now comes tertiary consumers. Tertiary consumers eat these secondary consumers. These can also be called as top consumers or top predators. The lion, tiger, eagle, they can be placed under this group depending on the position which they are having in the food chain. So food chain ends with these top predators, animals that have little or no natural enemies. So what happened when any of these organisms they die? It is eventually eaten by detritivores and it is then broken down by decomposers, that means bacteria and fungi. Some organisms position in the food chain can vary also as depending on their diet. Okay. For example, when a bear eats berries, what happens? It is functioning as primary consumer. When a bear eats plant-eating rodent, the bear it is functioning as a secondary consumer. Okay, when this bear it eats salmon, now it is acting as a tertiary consumer. This is because salmon it is secondary consumer, so salmon it is secondary consumer. Okay, yes. So that is all about the different types of trophic level. That is base of the trophic level. It is being constituted by these primary producers, and this trophic level it ends at top predators. Okay, children.